Pluckley can be found in the Domesday Book, at which time it was a more significant settlement than the nearby and now much larger town of Ashford. But Pluckley's main claim to fame is that in 1989 the Guinness World Records named Pluckley as the most haunted village in the country, with 12 apparitions. Don't believe the hype. There are better haunted places. What has annoyed me most, even more than the sensationalist press coverage that is trogged out periodically when readership is down or at Halloween, is that the locations are never identified with a map. So here, I'm doing my best to redress this omission. What I will make clear at the start, this is not a definitive investigation into the Pluckley ghosts, more an overview. So, are we sitting comfortably? Then let us begin. Number 1. Elvie Farm. Elvie Farm is at the end of Elvie Lane, just to the west of the village. An early 15th century farmhouse with 3 19th century derring windows. The stables have been converted into hotel accommodation. Lord Dering was hidden here before his capture during the height of the English Civil War, and captured French soldiers were imprisoned here during the Napoleonic Wars. Lastly, a Spitfire crashed at the top of the paddock running up from the stables on the 1st of September 1940. Within the office there is a piston from the Merlin engine that was recovered from the crash site, and a plaque in memory of 22-year-old Flying Officer Oswald St John Pigg of No. 72 Squadron. The smell of burning wool has been very evident in one of the bedrooms over the sitting room, and visitors have been awakened by the sound of doors being opened in the early hours, and many have the feeling of being watched when alone. Footsteps and voices have been heard, as well as a scratching on the servants' staircase. Plates are said to have flown off the table and smashed in the dining room. Lights have switched themselves on and off during the night. Bolted doors have been unlatched, and bales of straw in the outbuildings have been thrown about. In addition, a large bowl containing nearly 3 gallons of milk was found on the floor of the dining room, without any of its contents being spilt. Andrew Green records that, at 11 p.m. one evening in February 1970, Mrs. Ambrose saw a large illuminated white ball in mid-air, several feet from the floor, float across the bedroom and disappear by the chimney. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Mrs. Ambrose was standing in the main bedroom tidying her hair in front of the wardrobe mirror, and suddenly she realised that an apparition of a young man was lying on the bed behind her. Because of the length of the mirror, she could only see the upper part of the body. His face was pale, with a short, fair-cropped beard. He was about 23 to 24 years of age, and was propped up on one of the pillows. When she turned round, he had vanished. The following night, Alan Ambrose dreamt of the young ghost who appeared standing in front of him in a grey-coloured homespun Victorian-type suit, and he was trembling as if from palsy. On waking, Mr. Ambrose realised somehow that the front door had been unlatched. He went downstairs to find it wide open, and the hall light was on. "We never leave lights on," he told me, "and obviously we always check all the doors, bolting most of them behind us going to bed." A former owner, Simon Peake, confirmed that there have been numerous ghost sightings at the farmstead over the years. One of the ghosts is said to be that of Edward Brett, a resident farmer at Elvie in the 18th century. After giving his wife 15 shillings and each of his children a penny, Brett calmly walked into the dairy and shot himself in the head. Before he shot himself, his last words to his wife were, "I will do it," and this has been heard repeated in a whisper around the farmstead ever since. The apparition of Edward Brett has been witnessed at the farm carrying out the daily chores as he would have done in life. Another ghost at Elvie Farm is that of a man in military uniform who stands on the stairs that lead up to the attic bedrooms above the 16th century barn. Less documented apparitions are a highwayman who has been seen skulking about the grounds, and a lady in a red dress on a horse galloping towards nearby Manors Hill. Number 2. Parkwood. It is often said that an unnamed colonel from an unnamed period in history hanged himself in Parkwood, an area of woodland that is now largely vanished. The colonel is said to have been seen wandering among the few remaining trees in the area, but we have no definitive sightings, no first-hand accounts, and no further details whatsoever. Number 3. Pluckley Mill. Pluckley Mill was a smock mill, a sloping, weather-boarded tower, usually with 6 or 8 sides, with a cap that rotates to bring the sails into the wind. It got its name from this resemblance to smocks worn by farmers in an earlier period. The mill was working until 1916 and was a recognised landmark for aircraft, aiding airmen to find their exact bearings, until it was destroyed in a storm when it was struck by lightning in 1939 and burnt down. The miller, Dicky Buss, was a well-known figure in the village in the early 20th century. He was supposed to have haunted the ruins of the windmill. It was said he was normally spotted just before a thunderstorm. The mill has now completely gone, and so, it is supposed, has the ghost of the miller. Number 4. Dicky Buss's Lane. Dicky Buss's Lane is named after the miller of the early 20th century, whose mill was reached via this lane. From the book Pluckley Was My Playground, a boyhood memoir by Frederick Sanders, who recounts childhood memories of Pluckley from 1919 to 1926, we learn that a group of children on the way to school came upon the body of their teacher at the end of this lane, hanging from the branch of a tree. On certain nights it is said that his ghostly form, described as wearing stripy trousers and an old frock coat, has been seen swinging back and forth from the branch where he hanged himself. The reason for his suicide was never ascertained, but they do say that teaching gets you down. Number 4. Manors Hill. Manors Hill, the street, and several other locations around the village have all been the location for the sounds and occasional sightings of a horse-drawn coach pulled by 2 horses. One October, just after midnight, while driving home from babysitting her granddaughter, the apparition of a coach being pulled by horses with lights coming from its windows was witnessed at Pinnock's Crossroads. A local resident using the back roads to get home is said to have the coach pass straight in front of him. Air Commodore Sutcliffe told Andrew Green that his racing driver's son had twice heard the noises of a coach and horses driving through the village past his house in the early hours. In early November 1997, at around 7 p.m, someone who was driving through Pluckley had the inside of their car filled with the sound of horses' hooves on cobbles. It seems the late 1990s was the last alleged sighting of this phantom. Manors Hill, is said, was once the haunt of a headless horseman, but the details are not easy to track down. Number 5. The Bakery. On the corner of the Smarden Road and the street junction, the first building to see is the bakery. Renovations to this property, which included the removal of an old Victorian fireplace, exposed earlier features in the building, including the original hearth. These renovations, however, started a spate of inexplicable happenings, including ghostly footsteps that stamped across an upper room and fell silent as they reached the fireplace. In addition, an icy chill has been noticed at this spot, even on a hot day. Number 6. The Black Horse. An unmissable building in the street, this former pub is almost 700 years old and used to be a farmhouse surrounded by a moat and belonging to the local bailiff. Glasses are known to move across the bar. A poltergeist tidies things away and sometimes hides coats and wallets, which invariably turn up much later. It has also been known to sometimes throw cutlery. On our visit to the Black Horse in the 1990s, when it was still a pub serving good beer, there was a young girl in spirit wandering around, doing things to try and attract attention. But as I watched, she wandered off into the front bar, and that was my last contact with her. We were informed when ordering beers and generally chatting about the hauntings that the day before a piece of cutlery had been witnessed by two diners to slowly move through the air from the cutlery drawer at the side of the room and lay itself on the vacant table beside them. In addition, we were told that dogs have been seen to suddenly stop to stare and bark at empty spaces and refuse to go near one particular room upstairs. One local resident, Julie Halliday, in 2019 told a Kent Online reporter of a young girl called Elizabeth, believed to have been plastered into the walls of the Black Horse pub by her evil nanny. A lot of people say their hair gets pulled. A medium told us it's because she gets bored and mischievous. I used to leave a doll for her, but since we've had new owners and different staff over the years, the doll has been removed and she plays up. Roger Long visited the pub and was informed about the haunting at the Black Horse by a young lady behind the bar. We have three, and they are very scary indeed. We have an old lady, a young girl, and a cat, and you can feel their approach. And by some unknown means you can discern which is which. There is a tingling, almost choking coldness, which makes you feel sick to your stomach. My other half and I have experienced it at the same time. Richard Jones wrote that the manager of the pub in 1997 was Laura Gamling, who he interviewed about her experiences there. On her first Sunday, enjoying a cup of tea just prior to opening for the busy Sunday lunchtime session, she noticed a glass on the shelf above the bar move just a little. As she watched, she was astonished when it began to slide along the length of the shelf, stopping when it reached the edge. Other ghostly activity included an unseen hand that lifted cutlery from the dresser and arranged it neatly on the side, a spot in the kitchen where the pet dogs would stop abruptly and bark at something that the dogs could only see, and an upstairs room that the dogs refused to enter. In 2021, Lee Varnham and his partner Gemma O'Brien took over the Black Horse in Pluckley, intending to make it more a restaurant than a pub. While the pair stated that they hadn't seen any ghosts or figures, there had been a series of strange coincidences. A lot of the equipment that we used to redo the place would break, said Mr. Varnham. And it's not just older stuff. We're talking top range, new equipment as well. It was particularly true of working at the top. We've been told that the spirits here don't like it when we change things around. I'm sceptical myself, but the equipment malfunctions are hard to explain. Plus, we've both been ill since being here, which is very rare for both of us. Number 7. St Nicholas's Church. In the Domesday Book, Pluckley was in the possession of Canterbury, but in the late 11th century it was granted to John de Pluckley by Archbishop Lanfranc. The parish church of St Nicholas dates primarily to the 13th and 14th centuries. The Dering Chapel, separated from the rest of the church by 2 screens and found at the east end of the south aisle, was built in 1475. St Nicholas's Church is said to have 3 apparitions: the White Lady, the Red Lady, and a small white dog. The White Lady is said to be a beautiful female of the Dering family who died young and was buried in a fine white gown with a single red rose in a number of lead coffins and a final oak coffin before being interned in the family vault. In a number of reports, she is said to have died in the 1100 or the 1100s. She is said to be seen floating around the churchyard on misty nights, and also she's been seen manifesting within the chapel itself as a mist, or kneeling within the chapel with her dark hair contrasting with her white gown. The Red Lady is said to be another Lady Dering, also said to be buried in the Dering vault. She is described as a long-haired woman in a bright red gown who died in childbirth, with the child still born, and she is searching the graveyard for the grave of her child. There is a suggested link that this Red Lady was of the 17th century. A dancing light has been reportedly seen in the upper section of the church window, and is often accompanied by the sound of knocking from within the church. A group of psychic researchers stayed overnight in the church in the early 1970s, but experienced an uneventful night except for a small white dog. They told the vicar the next morning and commented that his dog frequently came to visit them. But the vicar didn't have a dog. Please also see my own investigations at the church on my YouTube channel, where we had quite an interesting time. Desmond Carrington, who once lived in Pluckley, has admitted to concocting a whole string of ghost stories for an article by Bill Evans, which featured in the TV Times in the 1950s. To me, the next three accounts are highly suggestive of being pure fantasy. Number 8. Greystones. In Station Road one finds a building named Greystones, named on the 1871 OS map as Rectory Cottage. It was built in 1863 as the home for the rector of nearby St Nicholas's Church. The area is reportedly haunted by a monk who is said to drift in and out amongst the trees. Rather fancifully, this monk is said to have died of a broken heart after his lover at Rose Court died. The apparition of the monk is believed to have been last seen either in 1971 by an unnamed couple, or in 1989 by an American journalist, also unidentified, who glimpsed the brown-robed figure drifting behind the house, but of course, no names of witnesses are given. There have been no recent reports of this monk being seen either. Number 9. Station Road. Also, while in Station Road, it is said that a few people have reported hearing the sound of a man and woman having a conversation, with the dog yapping while they walked down the road. The reports also suggest that it sounds as if the people are actually standing right next to you before they eventually disappear. Number 10. Rose Court. Nearby, behind some bushes on an unnamed road which stretches away to the left, lies Rose Court, a Grade 2 listed early 19th century building with 3 daring windows and a hipped tiled roof, which is named on the 1871 OS map as Rose Cottage. It is locally said to have been built by a member of the Dering family for his mistress. Now the tale is muddied and suggests an affair with a monk at nearby Greystones, and the woman is said to have taken her own life by eating poisonous berries. This Tudor lady, as she is described, is apparently heard calling for her dogs between 4 and 5 p.m. in the gardens. The garden, also, is reported to have an eerie atmosphere at times. Inside the building, strange groans and sighs are said to occur overnight, but this again is unsubstantiated. So why do I believe these to be pure invention? Firstly, there is no evidence of early buildings in the area, certainly not of the Tudor period, and both of the houses are simply mid-Victorian. There is no evidence for a monk or a mistress of the Derings in the village history. There's no evidence of a poisoning. It's all too sensationalist journalism to be true. Add the linking account of voices heard in the lane between the two properties, of a man and woman talking with a dog yapping, and it simply becomes ridiculous. Number 11. Sendon Manor. The main portion of the mansion was built by Sir Edward Dering, 1st Baronet, in the reign of Charles I, and it was here that the Dering manuscript, the earliest extant manuscript text of any Shakespearean play, was discovered. The manor was sold in the 1920s, after which it became an American embassy property and then a school. In 1920, Mr. Walter Winans supposedly held a lonesome vigil one Christmas Eve in the library with his hunting rifle. When the White Lady appeared before him, he shot her, with the bullet passing through her as she vanished through a panelled wall. The apparition of the lady was also seen by two Americans between World War I and World War II. A serious fire occurred in 1952 which destroyed most of the building, and the remains were demolished in 1953, except for the north wing. Number 12, the Daring Arms. This pub to the south of the village on Station Road was originally a hunting lodge built in the 1840s for the Daring family around the same time as the railway line from London to the Kent coast. The pub is said to be the home to apparitions, but in particular that of an old lady said to be seen sitting in the bar in Victorian dress and a bonnet. This apparition is said to be so clear that customers are said to have mistaken her for a real customer. As the Daring Arms website itself states, the Daring Arms itself holds mystery and intrigue, as some say they have witnessed ghostly figures in the bar, including an old lady dressed in 19th century clothes. Number 13, the Brickworks. To the west of the village and near the Daring Arms is the Pluckley Brickworks, which has now reopened. People have claimed to have heard screams from the site of the brickworks, and the local story tells of one man extracting clay in the pit when the side collapsed upon him, crushing and smothering him to death by a wall of waterlogged clay. Number 14, Daring Wood. Daring Wood has more widely become known as the Screaming Wood, for it is said that there have been numerous reports of screaming men and women being heard in there after dark. No dates are ever given to support the alleged phenomena witnessed, nor names of the people who reported hearing the screams, but the general belief is that it has happened at some time in the past. Additionally, there are no recorded deaths or missing persons who have never been found after venturing into the Daring Woods, despite some internet articles claiming there have been. Two alleged newspaper accounts that appeared got conspiracy theorists and armchair investigators all excited. A faked newspaper from 1948 described a Halloween massacre in the woods of 20 local people. Another stated that 4 students went missing in the woods in 1998, never to be seen again. These faked accounts have spread like wildfire and have in some circles become accepted as true. The only truth is that they are faked. This location has become a real tourist trap for the would-be ghost hunter, with some believing the tales and spending the night in the woods, just in case. Number 15, Fright Corner. At the end of Smarden Bell Road, you arrive at a junction and a small triangular green where it is joined by Green Hill Lanes, a former crossroads with many signposts. This is named in the folklore as Fright Corner, although no such name exists. It is possible that it is a corruption of Frith Corner, as at one time it lay next to the edge of Frith Wood. Frith is Anglo-Saxon in origin and means peace or security, or even a refuge free from violence or hostility. Frederick Sanders, as far as I can assess, gives the first account in 1955 when recounting his childhood memories from the 1920s. He asserts that a highwayman was killed here in the 18th century and made his last stand with his back to an oak tree that stood here until quite recently. It is said that the sword fight is to be occasionally repeated before unnamed startled witnesses who pass this spot in the early hours of winter evenings, or that his lifeless body has been seen slumped forwards and pinned to a phantom tree by a sword, or a number of swords, that protrude from his chest. The accounts differ depending upon the source. Andrew Green gives a date of 1969 for the removal of the tree. He also comments that, fairly recently, a dark shadow has been seen on the verge, where the tree and the ghost of the highwayman were witnessed in the earlier part of the 20th century. A name, Richard Dubois, has been linked with this apparition, and one that many internet armchair enthusiasts believed is fact, when in truth its origins can be traced to 2007 and the show Most Haunted, who revealed it to the adoring fans without a shred of corroborating evidence. And thus, the legend of Pluckley grows. Number 16. The Watercress Lady of Pinnock Bridge. Walking out of the village along Smarden Bell Road, and just after the junction with Rose Farm Road, we come to a much overgrown but signposted bridge that is the location for the tale of the Watercress Lady of Pinnock Bridge. The lady in question was Sarah Sharp, wife of William Sharp from Charing. Sarah was baptised Sarah Cackett in Charing on the 18th of November 1838, the daughter of George Cackett and Sarah Oliver. From the Faversham News of the 19th of August 1911, we learn the details of this tragic tale. A shocking fatality occurred between Smarden and Pluckley on Thursday, the unfortunate victim being an aged watercress seller named Sarah Sharp, whose charred body was found by the roadside, and whose clothing, some of which it was subsequently found to have been of flannelette, had been accidentally ignited, probably from a smouldering tobacco pipe. William Sharp of Charing identified several articles found near the body as belonging to his wife, which she had with her when she left home about 9 o'clock on Thursday morning. She was going to Pluckley and Smarden selling watercress. She was 76 years of age and was in the habit of smoking. He could not recognise the body, but he identified the shoes belonging to his wife and also the perambulator found near the body. John Maxted, a young man, stated, about 1:45 on Thursday he was riding horseback along the road between Smarden and Pluckley in the direction of Smarden, when he saw a woman sitting by the roadside. It appeared to him that her pocket was on fire. She was holding her clothes in her hand and trying to put it out. The woman did not say anything, and he did not speak to her. It did not occur to him that she was in danger. He rode on about 200 yards to the farm of Mr. Millen. He reported to Mr. Millen that there was a woman along the roadside whose clothes were on fire. He then went on his way, but hearing shouting came back. Mr. Millen was going down to the gate, and he, witness, went back the way he had seen the woman. He also saw Mrs. Weeks, and they all three went down to where the woman was. He then saw the body lying in the road. The clothes were all burnt off, and he believed the woman was dead. Mr. Millen had taken a bucket of water with him. The jury returned a verdict of accidental death by burning, and expressed the view that the witness, John Maxted, showed great thoughtlessness in not going to the aid of the deceased woman when he first saw her. Sarah was buried at Charing on the 14th of August 1911. Her apparition is said to have been seen many times. In earlier years, she is supposed to have manifested as a screaming, howling figure in flame. More recent sightings have stated that she appears as a misty figure or a faint pink glow which hovers in the air over the bridge. Alternatively, in some accounts, she is claimed to have been seen sitting on the bridge and smoking her pipe. Number 17, the Blacksmiths Arms. At the junction of Smarden and Smarden Bell Roads is a white weatherboarded building, still with the name of Blacksmiths on its side. The building's origins go back to the 14th century when it housed a blacksmith's forge. It then became an alehouse. This former pub has previously been called both the Spectres' Arms and the Ghosts' Arms because there have been so many hauntings. Among the figures who have been sighted in the pub were a Tudor maid, a coachman who gazes longingly at the fire in the public bar, and a cavalier wandering around in the upstairs rooms. Richard Jones writes about the ghosts of the blacksmiths. In 1997 it was a charming cosy tea room run by Gloria Atkins. One, she stated, was a cavalier, whose jovial form has been seen by several members of the family, striding in and out of the various upstairs rooms. The other was a Tudor maid, who would stand by the fireplace slowly turning the spit, watched by bemused customers. Gloria had also experienced other phenomena, such as a line of hanging mugs suddenly clinking together as though someone had just walked by and run a finger along them. In 1997, as she was working in the kitchen, she heard the front door open and close, followed by the sound of a chair being moved away from a table. Thinking it was a customer, she was surprised to find the tea room empty, but she could see that a chair had been moved back from a table. And that brings us to the end of our little Pluckley tour. I have not personally investigated all the locations in Pluckley, and others have long gone, such as Parkwood and the Mill. The brickworks is active again, and therefore dangerous and off limits. I may take a run out and visit the Daring Arms sometime. It sounds interesting to me. And it is a pity that the Blacksmiths has closed and Sendon Manor burned down, for they also seem truly interesting locations. If anyone has enough spare money to stay at Elvie Farm, I'd love a report, as I certainly cannot afford to myself. So, of the places that I've investigated at Pluckley, let's start with Daring Wood, where I visited in the late 1980s with a friend. We wanted to see if there was any truth in the allegations of screaming. As I've stated before, I don't like woods, but I thought, with company I'd be okay. Then it hit me that he could run faster than I can. As the light winked out and the darkness descended under the trees, there were one or two foxes and some barn owls calling out, and rustlings heard in the undergrowth. We got cold and bored as absolutely nothing paranormal happened as we walked around, stopping and listening. Was that a scream? No, just another bloody barn owl. And then we got interrupted by a group whose idea of investigating was laughing, shouting, pushing and shoving each other, and generally having a good time. Did I hear the crack and shush of opening beer cans? Yes, I think I probably did. We gave them a wide berth, until finally we ran out of coffee in the early hours and made our way back to the car. No one screamed in the wood, not after the other group got bored and went home anyway. Pinnock Bridge. No burning apparition came out to sit or hover on the bridge at us, or try to sell us watercress for that matter. No smell of pipe smoke either, and I have no burning desire to return there. Nothing happened at Fright Corner which wasn't frightening at all. We stayed for a couple of hours, and I'd normally expect to feel something in a haunted location. Actually I did. I felt cold. It was also a little busy with cars passing at speed. At Manors Hill and the street, there were no sounds of hoofbeats, nor a phantom carriage in sight. Maybe it was the wrong time of day for the coach to pass. A bit like the modern bus, come to that. Looking at the timetable online, it seems there are only now 2 bus services a day. At 8 o'clock in the morning to Ashford, and at 4 in the afternoon from Ashford. Take note if you have to use public transport. Of the places I have visited, only 2 stand out. The Black Horse was definitely atmospheric. It had that certain buzz that something was going to happen at any minute if you kept your eyes open. I really liked the place, and I wish I could have spent longer in there, and the staff were friendly and very approachable. So was the beer. And then there is the church, which is also well worth visiting. But that is a video already on my channel, and the investigation is explained far better there than I can here. And so we have come to the end of this little video. All that is left for me to do is to hope you have enjoyed this fairly brisk foray into the Pluckley ghosts, and wish you a very happy Samhain. Eat, drink and be merry, for who knows what tomorrow may bring.